Hello, the big screen. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining today. So we're gonna go ahead and get started, and my name is Rianne. I'm 21 Acres Administrative Assistant. I'm here to host with Alexia and Daniel from Hawthorn Farm, and we're just so excited to partner with them, and we've been grateful to work with them through the last year. They bring us so much education, and they're doing such beautiful things on their land, and it's just a pleasure to see. So really grateful that y'all are joining us today on your lovely Saturday. So first, I would like to just say a couple things about the event, and then we'll get on with the show. Um, First of all, I guess I should mention we very much appreciate and encourage participation. Through the virtual events. And if you have questions, we really want to hear from you. Daniel and Alexia are homesteading educators, and they've got a really great program. So there's good pausing times, most likely in between what they're going to share for you to answer or ask any questions. And I would encourage you to use the chat feature. You can ask questions in the chat. I will be in there kind of talking to y'all and sharing anything that comes up. And if you'd like, you can also unmute yourself at appropriate times to ask questions too. So do feel encouraged to do that. This will be a live recorded series, and we're going to post to our YouTube later on. So for folks who wanted to share this experience with a friend, you'll be able to. So just don't be worried that your face won't be on the screen with the way we record things. So it'll just be Alexia, Daniel, and maybe me. Let's see. What else should I mention? I will be sending an email follow-up through Eventbrite with some expansions on topics that we'll cover today, and maybe some resources for folks who want to source, gear and the tools needed to raise chickens. So, with a little of that out of the way, I do want to give a land acknowledgement. 21 Acres and Hawthorn Farm are both located in Woodinville, Washington, on the ancestral lands of Indigenous nations, including the Stillaguamish tribe, the Duwamish, and the Coast Salish peoples. And we acknowledge these nations as the original stewards of this land and honor both the land itself and the Coast Salish people, past and present, for all the beauty they've brought to this earth. So thank you for taking a moment to honor the land with us, and thank you for watching these virtual events so you can see how we're trying to steward this land for future generations responsibly. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our host, and I will be in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Rianne. Welcome here again, everybody. My name's Daniel again, and Alexia, my wife, and we're calling from Hawthorn Farm in Woodinville. And also want to name the Snoqualmie people as their traditional territory borders where we live here. And yeah, I want to share a little bit about Hawthorn Farm before we jump into the topic of the day. But I wonder if I can I change the view so I don't have to look at myself? Maybe.
I think you could, there's a little right hand option.
Does that change it for everybody?
No.
Okay, great. So Hawthorn Farm is our home and homestead and farmstead, because we also grow more food than we need and share with other people, selling some of it and sharing some of it. And Hawthorn Farm came about because Alexia noticed a lot of hawthorns one particular year, and it became a farm because we had a challenge that happened. A student of mine, 15-year-old student of mine a while ago, maybe it's a decade ago now, did a self-generated challenge where he spent an entire month eating wild foods from North Idaho as a practical project and an economic one, so he could get to summer camp where I worked as an instructor. And I was so inspired by this 15-year-old making all these connections and with the sources of life that were feeding him and his family, and really diving into that. I was so inspired by that. I said, Alexia, we should do a pop quiz. Let's, for the next 2 days, see if we can just eat food that we have a full story for, from this land, from what we've collected on our wild foraging trips, whatever we've got right now in the cupboard and freezer and yard and woods, let's eat for the next 2 days, and nothing that's store-bought or that we don't know the full story of. And so we did that for 2 days, and it worked. We stayed alive. We didn't starve. It wasn't exactly fasting. There was enough to drink and eat, and it was actually sort of deeply satisfying. It so much so we said, let's try this again, but let's prepare for a year, and then let's do it for a full week, and let's make it really, really fun and nourishing. And that grew to the next year after that. Let's try 2 weeks and then 1 week out of every season. And the project grew after that into Hawthorn Farm. And in 2017, we spent the entire year, every single bite. We were very, very fastidious and disciplined about every single bite. We had the story of that food. Maybe not the full story, but we had harvested it by hand, or someone we knew had harvested it by hand and given it to us. No money exchanged hands for the food we ate. All gift, or all our own labor, or all gift from the wild. And in the 6 years that project took, our landscape here at Hawthorn Farm transformed into gardens and goat pens and chicken coops and rabbit hutches and pony corrals and compost piles and hoop houses and greenhouses, because we really wanted to eat well, and we wanted it to taste good, and we wanted to be able to eat greens at all times of the year, and we wanted to eat a variety of food, not just like, okay, we grew 2,000 pounds of squash, let's eat nothing but squash for the next 6 months. We kind of didn't want to go there, though, I mean, humans have throughout history. This is not a novel idea to eat from regional sources and from the work of our own hands and well-storied food. This is actually the way that most humans have lived for most of time. Well, maybe not most humans, because we have so many billions on the planet right now, but for most of human history, we've had a storied connection with our food. And that's been fun, that's been nourishing, that's been seasonal. And in the process of the last decade of homesteading and farmsteading, we've gathered a few tips and lessons, and we're partnering with 21 Acres to share some of those. So that's just a little bit of background on why we're sharing, in case there's some new folks. And I'm just so pleased to see that folks are joining all the way from across the ocean. It looks like Belgium, and all the way across the country in Boston. But I will say that some of what we offer, well, actually everything that we offer, is really about like our situation, our context, our climate, our bioregion, our soils. And a lot of that might fit for folks, especially the folks who live close to here, but not everything we offer might fit for everybody. So just want to have that caveat. I noticed some people are already throwing some questions and ideas in the chat. And if you do have any questions, again, encourage you to put them in the chat. We're going to start a PowerPoint presentation on poultry, and we're going to settle this once and for all. Chickens versus ducks. That's why Alexia and I are both here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it looks like I need to be able to share my screen. I don't know if you can make that magic happen, Rianne. And in the meantime, I'll answer the question about chicken coop and apiary, because I have kept bees as well. And some chickens can get the knack of just grabbing bees out of midair. So I don't know that I would put the bees right in there. However, chickens, if the bees are out of reach for them, that seems totally great. And if you're using drone comb to control varroa mites in your beehives, which is a strategy some beekeepers use, your chickens are great at eating drone comb, eating young bees that have a particular kind of mite on them and removing those pests from the population. So there are ways to integrate them. There's not necessarily any particular distance. You just want to make sure your chickens haven't gotten the taste for fast food and are able to nab bees on the wing. Okay.
Hearing that.
Green. Okay, when we hit that,
So
it
yeah.
says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, that's my fault. Okay, let me go fix that.
Yeah.
First I'll try to make you guys co-hosts.
So funny to like learn all these very analog skills and then also learn to interface with the digital world. Okay, let's start again. Bing! Here we go.
You'll click those two check marks on the bottom just to make sure we've got optimal screen sound.
I think things are happening.
There seems to be a little clicking noise that's happening on maybe your end. Not sure. Maybe it's a microphone on like the laptop or something, but
okay, yeah, I don't hear it here.
Okay.
Let me know if it's persisting or if anybody else is hearing it. I don't know what we could poke here, but we could try.
Sounds good now. I don't know. Sorry. Thank you so much.
And can y'all see the screen?
Yes, we can.
PowerPoint, great. This is a chicken coop that Daniel built me as a courtship gift. So quite fond of it. Anyhow, take it away, Daniel.
It's beautiful.
So maybe folks on the call already have chickens or ducks or other poultry. Maybe you're just getting started. Maybe you want to get started. Maybe you're just calling in for entertainment purposes. We're going to try to share something for all the range of folks who might be here. And maybe you want to take it on as like, I want to eat 2 eggs a day every day of the year. Or maybe you just, I want to just have a few chickens because they're fun to have around, or I want a few ducks because I want them to eat my slugs. We're going to try to offer something for everybody. So, go ahead. Why would you keep domestic-ish birds in your backyard? We say ish because they don't come when you call them necessarily. Actually, we've trained our ducks too, and some of our chickens. But they're slightly wild still, even though they're living in the backyard and will stick around. I actually gave some of my ducks to a friend and they ran off from their more wild yard. So they will just kind of take off. So why do we keep birds? I love being with my chickens every day. I love being with the ducks every day. I love taking care of them. I love eating from them, both their eggs and their meat. I love the way that the gardens respond to chickens, being partners in soil tending. We're having a debate right now whether the pastures are doing great with the chickens. More about that later. But they're just really fun to have. I love having the full cycle as well. We brood our own chickens from eggs from roosters and hens that we've raised. We bring in new genetics every once in a while, but they procreate. We brood the chicks and we raise a new flock every year, also with our ducks. Also, it's fun for kids, the kids who live here and the kids who visit us for our programs. Being with animals, I think especially in this last year of COVID, has been a real connective help for people to be hands-on with other beings in a safe way. So lots of good reasons to keep birds in your yard, and I guess you'll find your reasons to get them or keep them. Here are some of the takeaways we'd like to offer for this time. So we're not going to get into each one right now, but this is what we're hoping to cover. Poultry are great friends and workers, not always the right tool for the job that you need or the space that you have.
Hammers are great tools. Do you put on mascara with a hammer? No.
Wow, that would be an interesting scene. We really encourage movable pens, and we'll talk more about which pens we use and why. Better for the birds, slightly more work for the humans sometimes, and better for our ground. Free ranging birds have pluses and minuses, and we'll share how we let our birds free range when we do and why. The brooding phase, which is pictured there below with those little ducks in the bathtub. When the birds, when they first arrive out of the egg or from the hatchery, that first month, it takes the most attention and care to keep them alive and happy, especially if we're talking turkeys. We probably won't talk much turkeys, but yeah, that first month requires a lot of commitment and attention. And after that, they're pretty darn resilient. And then we really practice honoring feedback from the system, from our yard, from our landscape, from our neighbors, from the forest, from the wild ones, and from the chickens themselves, and from the ducks. So we learn by watching. I watch how much they eat. I watch where they move. I watch how their feathers look. I watch all sorts of things, and I keep notes in my mind and also on my computer. Like I have graphs of when they lay the most eggs and how many eggs I'm getting a day and all that kind of stuff. So we learn from watching. All the benefits are not just caloric, in other words, what we can eat, but from integrating the whole system's awareness of the land into our lifestyle, into our way of living.
Oh, so gorgeous. All your photos are really fantastic, just by the way.
So what birds,
sorry, go ahead.
what birds might you choose for your situation, for your yard, for your farmstead, for your apartment? Hey, it can be done right on the balcony. Chickens and ducks are really the most chosen, probably globally and definitely in the United States for backyard poultry, and chickens probably more than ducks. We've also raised turkey, quail, geese, and guinea fowl, sometimes by accident. Someone's like, I'm on my way to your farm with 3 guinea fowl. Can I drop them off? It's like, okay, sure. We've never tried guinea fowl before. Can you imagine like the most piercing scream in the evening? Like, whoa, startling you out of your own living room. That's kind of the guinea fowl story.
Sounds like a chicken running a chainsaw. Like you cross a chicken and a chainsaw, and that's what a guinea fowl sounds like. And some people love them. We weren't huge fans for our situation.
Turkeys are notoriously tender, especially at a young age. We ordered turkeys, and I mean, we would baby them and we would still lose over half of them. They just seem to be so tender. And quail, they're so small and cute, and especially they're like pocket size. You could like put them in your pocket and walk around with them. Somebody dropped off a bunch of quail here too, and in case you were testing your knowledge, that egg in the center, the small one, is a quail. The one in Catherine's right hand is a turkey egg, the one with spots, the white one with spots, small spots. The brown one, of course, is a chicken egg, and the white one in Catherine's left hand is a duck egg.
So there's a bird out there for everybody. Yeah. Okay.
But we're going to focus on chickens versus ducks, the perennial question.
Should we see if there are any questions?
Yeah, speaking of questions, we do have some great sharing going on in the chat. I asked if some folks have had chickens, anyone who's on this call, if they're raising chickens right now. And it looks like we've, of course, got people who are interested in doing so. One of the big debates is space and how much space we need. So I was excited to hear that you could do this on an apartment balcony. I would love to hear.
Oh, yeah,
Quail.
Oh, quail. Okay, not chickens. They
Yeah,
would
not
be
the chickens.
so great. Quail raising them would be amazing. Okay, so yeah, I guess you may have this coming up already in your presentation, but how much space would you recommend to have chickens?
That's definitely one of the it depends questions that I think we'll get to in housing. There's kind of a like more is better, but there are also some constraints about making it easy for the humans too, and whether your birds are free ranging or whether you're keeping them confined all the time. It's fair to the birds if they're confined to give them as much space as is practical, but there are different ways to give them space. And for us, that's movable pens that we move every day. And that way they are getting fresh space, like more interesting environment without us having to have a giant enclosure. If that makes sense.
A factory farm will keep one chicken in this amount of space.
It's about an 8.5 and 11.
So most of the eggs that most people eat and most of the chickens that most people eat, this is how much space those chickens have. And one notebook piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can do better than that, that would be nice for your chickens and for your health. Mm-hmm. But just to be clear, in America, most of the chickens are raised in that much space.
Wow.
So you can probably do better than that for your backyard birds.
Yeah.
And we are recommending that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
More space than that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, it is interesting, the nutritional value that comes from the bird and is directly translated into the eggs. Like we want them I prefer always eating the free range eggs from the farm market and even our farm. When we had chickens, another question that kind of weaves into this, our chickens got eaten by coyotes recently, all of them. And we're so sad because this keeps happening on our farm. But yeah, someone else had a question about how to keep them secure from predators such as rats or raccoons and coyotes. And maybe we can get to that in a bit too.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the choosing of the birds here. And this is the great poultry showdown of chickens versus ducks.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yeah, they're facing off here. Okay.
I say chickens.
I say ducks. Sorry.
Because the chickens are cuter.
No, never. Come on. There is no way. Public opinion
Look
says
at that little
clearly
chickie.
the webbed feet, tiny webbed feet. You cannot deny the webbed feet. Okay.
I do like the webbed feet and when they drink water. So cute.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So here are some creature features of chickens and ducks. So yeah.
So chickens are easier usually to find in your neighborhood at feed stores. But both chickens and ducks can be ordered mail order. So chickens are generally easier to find because more people have them and more people get them. And ducks are a little harder to find.
Yep. Totally worth it though.
At first I was like, wait, easy to find. They're both pretty easy to find on our farm. You just listen for them. And I actually choose white chickens so I can find them easily if they get out.
Mm-hmm.
White feathered chickens. So chickens normally are drier. So, and ducks are normally wetter in terms of like how they tend to their spaces. Ducks need a lot of water. Chickens need very little water. Ducks are messy and dabble with their bills, and chickens just drink water very slowly in little bits at a time. So that's a consideration, if you have a place where ducks can be really wet and happy, great. If you need it to be drier, chickens might be the way to go.
Mm-hmm. The classic chicken sound is the crowing rooster. A lot of municipalities don't allow roosters because of that. We get woken up at 4 a.m. regularly here. Like, it's hard to sleep in if you've got roosters going on. The hens will occasionally cluck when they lay an egg. Ducks can quack, and sometimes pretty loudly, and at any hour of the day or night. Like, a duck never sleeps. You know, they just they'll always quack if something comes by their pen and disturbs them. Some people even have like guard ducks for that reason. And I'm just going to move right down to the key feature of ducks is that they will just gobble slugs. They just gulp them down. They run around looking for slugs and eat them like calamari and just slurp them off the landscape. I can garden because we have ducks. And even if our ducks never laid a single egg, and even if nobody ever ate a duck here, I would still keep ducks just for their slug eating powers.
Yeah, okay, I gotta hand that one to you. Chickens will not eat slugs even when you throw them into their pen chopped up. But if you could somehow get flies to eat slugs, maybe the chickens would eat the flies. So chickens are also pals in the garden because they will scratch up ground with their feet, which is why the enclosures that we'll show you in a bit are called tractors, because when the chickens are moved from one patch of ground to another, they scratch as much as they can in the soil, looking for terrestrial invertebrates and small, tiny seeds and whatever they can find in the soil to eat. Whereas ducks don't really scratch with their feet.
They've got their bills and they'll dabble through the mud, and they will make some pretty serious mud holes. If there's a spot with a drippy hose bib or a leaky hose or just a pond on your land, I've watched them just undermine banks, and they make quite a muddy mess for sure, just with their cute little plastic spoon beaks. Yeah. I would say that ducks are a little more fun to watch. It's always great to pull up a chair and just sit there and watch the chicken channel, but most people who come to the farm comment on how fun the ducks are. They're like loaves of bread with legs. So I get a kick out of watching the ducks.
Especially when they're walking, super cute. Chickens do well confined in small spaces. Ducks and ducks in general like to free range and roam. So our ducks roam all day long, and our chickens generally are confined to small concentrated spaces, but moved every day. So that's quite a difference.
Yeah, the ducks is just not quite fair to keep them in one single spot. Also, ducks don't tend to come hang out on our porches. The chickens, if they free range, will come and just like hang out right in front of the door. We, like, trip over them, and they're pooping on our doorstep. And the ducks are just make better free ranging neighbors. And ducks are also really easy to herd and move around. As a matter of fact, ducks are used to train sheepdogs how to herd, because ducks will all stay together and all move in a little flock through the landscape. It's super fun. So, and we actually had kids like work the ducks through a little obstacle course. You really learn how to subtly move the ducks, and you can herd them into their pen. So they're fun to move around and respond well, unless they've gotten out onto a big pond, and then unless you're out there in a kayak, it's hard to get them back.
But chickens have a mind of their own, sort of like cats. You're not going to really, in my experience, not going to get them to go where you want them to go. They'll go in like 17 different directions, and that's only 12 birds. So I have to usually wait till night if they end up getting out, or lure with food. Chickens, also a big drawback, and why we choose to keep most of our chickens in small pens, is they are three-dimensional. In other words, they don't mind going up and over even 3-foot tall fences, and sometimes even 4-foot tall fences. And so unless you clip a wing, or unless you keep your fences tall, or unless you keep them concentrated, chickens will move upwards and over fences. And we don't want them going into places where we have like 1,000 baby plants, seedlings, because they're going to go up and scratch. They're not going for the plants, but they're going to kill all those plants going for the worms.
Yeah. There was a question about that we had from Val, who asked if a 6-foot fence would keep chickens from escaping. Is that, you said 4 foot and above at least?
It really depends on the chicken, and some breeds of chicken will never fly. Like the meat chickens, they can barely walk, let alone actually achieve liftoff. But bantam chickens, like we watched our bantams just, sail for 30 feet downwind through the air. I just pulled a bantam off of our roof the other day. Like they will just fly. That's part of what they do. So really depends on the chicken, and you can clip the wing feathers. So you're not actually, cutting the bird, you're just cutting the feathers, and that will help keep a bird on the ground. But ducks are very two-dimensional. Like you can just put a little 6-foot tall fence, 6-inch tall fence, and that will keep them like away from a row of seedlings or something. We've had, very low, like 1-foot chicken wire fences around our garden, they kept the ducks out, but people kept tripping over them. So we just made taller fences to actually help the people out.
That is awesome.
And so along with that, being close to the ground, ducks are just huge fans of mud. They love the rain. They love the cold, wet. If you are living in a place with a lot of dry, frozen ground through a big chunk of the year, backyard ducks might not love it. Like they just do well with liquid water available for most of the year. Whereas chickens can kind of just fluff up their feathers and they can do fine in dry, cold weather.
Neither of them love snow in my experience, but they'll tolerate it.
So there was one question we had above I missed about quail too. Are quail and chickens compatible? Are they similar to take care of?
They're fairly different. Again, compatibility might depend on space that you have. We kept our quail loose in a great big hoop house with lots of cool habitat. You might be able to mix in a chicken or two there. Quail require really high protein feed, and they're growing really fast, and they are producing a lot of eggs at a very young age. So this is something where they can also do well in a caged situation if you're just like giving them a nice big tray of earthworms every day or something. We had issues with predators grabbing the quail. Rats are like, oh, bite-sized chicken, like perfect. So that was some of our issues with quail.
Thank you.
So we're talking generalities with chickens and ducks, but the breeds are very different. And that's way too much to get into for this conversation. And then even strains within breeds. Like I've been breeding my own chickens here at Hawthorn Farm for the last 4 or 5 years. So they may be a little bit more attuned to this climate and region than a Delaware, which is the kind of breed that's sourced from, say, like Southern United States. So keep in mind that, there's generalities, but there's also a lot of specifics too. We're not going to get into all that though. We're going to keep moving.
Yeah. And ducks and chickens are not the same. Like it's hard to keep them in the same spaces as that mother duck is telling those chickens down there.
But what's really fun is when we have a chicken brood, when we have a chicken brood ducks, but more story on that later. Housing. We prefer mobile housing so that we can move the birds around and we can work different sections of the land for intense bouts, for short, intense periods of time. So for us, it's like a day or two. As you can see, those mobile pens, which we call tractors, have wheels, and there's various sizes depending on how many birds. So what's a good general rule for how much space for a chicken for the coop? You know, like how much square footage? I would say probably we like to, for that 120 square foot pen that's pictured right there, I like to keep about 10 or 12 chickens in that size. We've also kept up to 50 in there when we're doing large batches of meat birds or roosters.
So you can see here in the foreground where those tractors just were, and the ground looks dreadful. But cast your eyes to the horizon. See that huge, thick stand of lush grass? That too looked terrible 3 weeks prior when the chickens just mowed it down. And then by concentrating that chicken impact and then letting the land rest, the grass just responds with this great big burst of growth. And in fact, where those chickens were, that used to essentially be just flat mud when I first moved here in 2003, totally overgrazed. And by running chicken tractors on it, it has revitalized into a land that feeds us really well. So this is one of the ways that we use chickens, and it requires attention and observation. Where does the land need chicken impact and when? So it kind of factors into this puzzle, you know, of like this observation crossword puzzle, which animal's going to go where, when, part of us orchestrating the landscape. And we're working on a few acres here, but you can do this on any size scale you want.
Likely many folks are going to have just like a backyard or a side yard, and getting creative with the size and space. Like you might have a chicken coop, which we don't like to use, but that might be what works best. And then a run for your chickens to get out during the day and use a section, or maybe they get to go out into the yard, but then come and concentrate in a small area in the yard at night, where they go out in the full yard during the day or in one garden section during the day. So getting creative with the fencing and the housing that fits your land and needs and your management style as well. But basically you should plan on having to go out every day, at least twice a day, to tend your birds. Morning and night is when we do it.
Morning and night is when you move the birds' enclosures, or is that over a couple of weeks?
We move those enclosures every other day or every day, sometimes in the winter, and we feed them in the morning and in the evening, and we check their waters as well. Yeah. And then the ducks come out in the morning, forage all day on their own, and then they come back into a call for feed. Come on, duckies, come on in. And then they all just come over because they've been trained that way.
Awesome. This kind of sounds like rotational grazing, which I learned from Joe Salatin, I believe.
Yep.
Yes. And that whole process of, you know, like the chickens are scratching at the soil with their feet and their beaks, and they're pooping, giving us great compost. And then I forgot who comes next in his rotational pattern, but for folks who maybe want another visual, I can send that in a follow-up link about rotational grazing patterns, because it's just makes sense. It just makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So here we have a chicken pen there on the left. In the spring, those chickens are in a pen that fits on top of the garden bed, and we can just scoot that pen along the garden bed and let the chickens turn it up and take care of the weeds and get the land ready for planting. In the wintertime, the chickens hang out often inside these hoop houses. It's propped up to keep the snow from squishing it down, where you can put in compost, put in straw, and the chickens hang out and scratch in there. And it's a great place to hang out. You can just put a lawn chair in there and watch the chicken channel. So.
And actually the birds' heat will warm the hoop house more. So the hoop houses with birds in them are actually warmer than the hoop houses without.
Great.
Alexia calls this the grand piano because it sort of looks like it, and it's very heavy. I thought I was going to design the best chicken tractor, and I was quite humbled by how heavy this one is and hard to move. So if you're moving it around every day, make sure that it's fun and easy.
Yeah, you saw how short the other pens were. That's to make them light. Like chickens don't need cathedral ceilings. They're only, they're short. They have perches they can hop up onto. That's all they need. This is great if you're leaving it in one spot for a while and like throwing in straw so it doesn't get too gross and poopy in there, straw or leaves. And you can really transform chunks of lawn by leaving chickens in that spot for a while, and you will turn it into fertile garden space. That's what we have done with this.
And if you don't want to transform chunks of lawn, they will still do it anyway. So just be careful about where you put your chickens, that you really want that impact.
I have to say, I just love that you said it was built to woo Alexia. That's just so beautiful. My boyfriend and I met through composting. I feel like kin here.
So our ducks, we move our hoop house once a year and pile all the bedding that has accumulated for an entire year into one tall compost pile, let it sit for 4 months, and then we use that on a garden for the next season, whatever season that is coming. So it looks like this, and it just keeps piling up. So a small hoop house is a really nice mobile solution, and I just designed this one myself for cattle panels. That's going to have to be another class another day. But our ducks roam all day, and then they come back in for a pen at night. Speaking of predators, we've had otters, eagles, hawks, raccoons, a opossum, owls, amongst others. Bobcat, take our ducks and chickens out of our yard and pens. And so basically, we let them teach us how to protect the animals, because keeping an otter out is not the same as keeping an eagle out. And both have taken ducks out of our yard. And we've got, we could do a whole hour of stories just on the predators.
We haven't had a lot of losses recently for, there's that question about coyotes and predators. For the otter, the only effective thing that we found, 11 ducks into the process, into our learning journey, was electric fence. And by rigging up an electric wire around the pen, we have 0 losses. But that's another reason that the chickens stay undercover and in those pens where they are safe. And then the ducks have wised up over the years, and we keep old ducks from year to year, the ones who are the flock leaders, who know how to manage the flock and where to eat and when, where the eagles come from. And so when we have those wise ducks on board, our losses drop. So value that local knowledge for all species.
Each protecting from each different predator will also be different depending on if your pens are near a wildlife corridor, if your backyard is near a wildlife corridor. Like, those animals are constantly going by, and they know when you're not paying attention, and when your critters aren't paying attention. And those times, we lost 3 ducks to a bobcat who just waited in the same place, and the ducks just love going from their pen to the pond, and the bobcat just hung out there. And in terms of the coyote question, really the most vulnerable times of day are the evening and morning. They should be safe all night. So if they're not fully enclosed all night, like, they don't stand a chance. And then during the day, coyotes and bobcats will still hunt during the day, and so will hawks. So you either have to have overhead protection, or maybe a double fence or a taller fence. But we kind of let the predators teach us.
There was a question from Sarah who asked, how high off the ground did you place the electric wire to ward off the otters?
Just a few inches.
otter
Awesome.
nose height.
Otter nose
Otter nose height, which is 4.5 inches or so.
Thank you. Yeah, that's probably another benefit to being outside physically, because you can wave your arms around and scare off creatures, kind of. But I'm sure they're brilliant. That they're survivors, so they will continue to teach us.
And as we humans encroach more and more on wild spaces with our housing and make those wild spaces smaller, we're going to have more interactions. So in some ways, we try to keep an extra amount for the wild ones. I mean, I don't love losing my chickens and ducks either, especially not all of them. I'm sorry that happened, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've spoken to Jess, our wetland restoration specialist, about this, because it's just like jarring, and then of course I'm frustrated at the other animals, like why are they killing all the things, but bringing in the whole perspective of this is their land as well, and they do bring some valuable biodiversity and ecosystem services to the habitats that they're living in, like with coyotes, they spread scat, and they're hunting rabbits, which are also going to eat our lettuce. So I don't know. It's all like a give and take. And I wanted to just jump in one more time. We've got 15 minutes left.
Yep.
All right.
Trying to
And lots of ground to cover.
Okay.
You are what your animals eat. So you buy the highest quality food you can, or produce it yourself.
So there's a lot about this here, but we're always trying to use more of the solar energy that falls on our land. We buy multiple tons of chicken food a year for 35 or so chickens and 20-ish ducks, 15 to 20 ducks. So it takes a lot of food that is being grown elsewhere, and we still rely on that because chickens eat grains and they eat proteins like we do. And so for us currently, we are bringing in outside food. You can get away with feeding your birds a lot of compost and kitchen scraps and everything, but it's not always a balanced diet. And if they're free roaming, they can balance more of their own diet themselves, but you still need to kind of make sure that they're able to have find the carbohydrates and the proteins that they need, and as well as the green food. Yeah.
So the rule of thumb is 1/3 green food, 1/3 protein, 1/3 grain is a typical rule of thumb for their diet. Biggest issue we see from birds that people drop off to us are they are overfed. They are really fat, which is kind of nice for us because then we get to have a lot of chicken fat to cook with. But people generally overfeed their birds, and these are working birds. So if they're overfed, they're not working as well. So they only need about a half cup a day, or about a quarter pound of feed a day. Make sure they have oyster shell if they're laying eggs, and that they have access to soil and invertebrates.
Can we skip the maggot bin video?
Sure.
Great. So we're going to skip the maggot bin. So that's one way to get protein right out of the air. Pretty amazing. So but we'll just skip right over that and go on to the gifts from your flock.
So since we breed our own chickens, we decided to take that on. Our chickens produce eggs and also meat for us to eat. So here's an egg I collected today. That's probably a double yolker.
As in it has 2 yolks inside of it, which you'll get occasionally.
And here's a from our bantam hen compared to the double yolker. So
yeah, much smaller. So the size of the bird is going to influence things. And if you're producing your own eggs, you're going to get weird, like tiny eggs and eggs that have leathery shells sometimes, like all the stuff that never quite makes it to the grocery store, but it's still perfectly edible. You might get eggs with little blood clots inside of them. That's totally fine. Just put extra pepper on those scrambled eggs and you can totally eat it. It's a genetic trait.
We've chosen a dual purpose bird in the Delaware breed because we want to eat the roosters for meat and keep the hens for egg laying. And so we butcher the roosters just when they start to crow. And if we're breeding our own, then it's just about half roosters, half hens. And what are you going to do with that many roosters? So with any bird that you choose, or actually really with anything that we choose on our landscape, what's the retirement plan? Like, where's it going to go at the end of its working life, whatever that is? We have a lot of people who live nearby who drop off chickens to us because they're not sure how to process them themselves, or don't want to process the family pet. Like it's like killing a friend. So it's good to know what you're going to do with your birds before you start that cycle of life with them. Can you bring them somewhere? Can you process them?
Yeah, or do you want to just feed them for the 10 years of their life, even though they stopped laying years before? Like, in having those conversations before you take on chicken raising, and also knowing that you have a 6-month wait from that tiny little chick until when that bird, if it's a female, is going to start laying eggs for you. Some people don't factor that in either, and they get impatient.
We process all our own meat here. We don't bring in meat from anywhere else unless it's roadkill and occasionally hunted. And it's probably about, for a household of 10 people, it's probably about, I'm guessing 70 chickens in a year that we eat, 70, 75. So that's maybe, what is that? Like a little over a chicken a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So think about that in terms of planning.
Also, I'm just going to mention winter lights. A lot of people will put lights on their chickens to have that stimulate egg laying. And so here at this latitude, with the long nights, chicken egg production will drop a lot. So if you have a little light on a timer that gives the chickens a longer day length, they will keep laying eggs. And some people totally do that. I just have gotten lazy about finding like a little solar light that will kick on in the morning, but you can rig that up to get better winter production from your birds. So that's an option to keep yourself in eggs through the winter, or just accept the seasonal variations, which is what we do.
Yeah, I love that. Eating seasonal, it just kind of brings you into the harmony of Earth. I was wondering about insulation. Is now are they insulated right now, or should they be?
No.
For our region and our climate, we don't ever have to. They carry their insulation around. As
True.
From our Mrs. B right there, she's insulating those chicks. Now chicks are a little bit different. For that first month, right in the edge of that duckling picture, you can see a little box right there with a little dark band underneath it. That's a brooder box with heat lamps in there that they can go in and out. So for that first month, when we're brooding chicks, we do need to keep them warm, right around 100 degrees. Or if we have a hen that's gone broody and hatched out chicks for us, she'll do the keeping up. She'll keep them warm when they need. So we actually prefer that if we can have one broody hen living around, and we do right now. But we have to make a brooder spot. So where are you gonna pick up chickens or ducks? Feed store is a great way, but I've heard that they've been selling out these last few years. Mail order, we've done that, but it's usually there's a minimum so that they survive. They need the heat of each other to make it through the mail. You could grow your own. That's a little harder and takes some planning and time. We do. Or you could find farms like ours or other people's, or like on different ads for people selling pullets, which are chicks that have been raised from eggs or from mail order and then raised up until they're at laying age, which is usually 5 or 6 months for our birds. Alexia is going to bring in one of our pullets that we raised here. When you get your chicks as chicks, you do need to have everything set up to keep them warm enough and to feed them and to water them. They are tender and fragile, as we've said. So yeah, those are some different ways to pick up your ducklings. And this is Mrs. B. She's raised ducks for us. And what's super fun is when she's taking her little ducklings out, and they go and dive into the pond, and she's like on the edge of the pond, like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're gonna die in there, you're gonna drown. And they're swimming like pros, and she's on the edge of the pond freaking out. So actually chickens will raise ducklings.
Yes, we actually had a duck that was hatched with our chickens on the farm at 21 acres, and it was a male duck, and he thought he was a hen. It was amazing. He acted just like a sweet little hen. And who's this friend you've brought us?
So this is one chicken who hatched out on Halloween, and our current bantam hen, hatched her out and took care of 13 lucky chicks all throughout the winter. So when you're holding a chicken, it's helpful to squeeze them, hold them from the sides, just like you. They don't want to be pressed front and back. They feel much more secure being held on the side, and they like to be held just confidently. She doesn't love it. The chicken feet are kind of dangerous part, so you don't want these waving around. Like, just be aware of where they are so you don't get a claw up your nose. And you can also hold them under your arm, and I'm holding her feet securely, but this way I have a free hand to, undo a latch on a coop or something. So just a little chicken handling tip there.
I wonder, in the last couple of minutes, I'm going to ask, just like verbally ask any folks if they wanted to share a couple of questions they might have, any final questions, and you can type those into the chat, and then we'll see if we can share some.
Sounds good. We're kind of zooming through the what to do with baby chicks. And the baby chicks are enough of a hassle that a lot of people just you can buy started pullets, buy birds who don't need all this, kind of intensive care. Plus, hatcheries don't always ship primo chicks. They'll often put a free chick or two in a box, and those aren't going to be the greatest chicks necessarily. So highly recommend the brooder box setup that kind of approximates a mother hen, and the book Success with Baby Chicks has great plans and great tips on being successful with these little critters. There's a picture of the brooder after the chicks have lived in there. You probably don't want to brood chicks in your house. Been there, done that. Everything gets covered with chicken dust. Yeah, let's call it dust. Okay, page of resources, and happy to answer some questions.
Were there any questions in the chat?
Thank you so much. There was one that it's good timing. Are there recommended chicken types to start with for egg laying? And what is the minimum quantity of chickens you should have to keep them happy?
Start with the second question. I would say 3 hens is plenty for them to kind of have their flock dynamic thing going on. So 3 hens is just fine. You can kind of go up from there depending on space and inclination. And then let's see, for egg laying, really you want some production strains of birds. There are lots of kind of heritage breeds or show breeds out there that may or may not produce eggs worth a darn, or like produce half as many eggs or a quarter as many eggs as the production strains who are laying 300 plus eggs a year. So you kind of want somebody with the genetics, like with the capacity for egg laying. And some of the leghorns are, of course, like the classic crank out the egg birds. And some of the Rhode Island Reds or Barred Rocks have production strains within those breeds that are known for their production. And usually the hatchery or the place you're ordering from should be able to tell you or give you an estimate of how many eggs that bird is going to lay.
Most of the places that you order them, if you look online on the online ordering forms or in the catalogs, they'll say like 300 eggs a year generally, or 200 eggs a year, green eggs, or large brown eggs, or white eggs. So you can kind of do a little bit of research. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I can send a follow-up link too. After the event today, I'm going to send out some of these great resources that you've listed here, and maybe some like maybe a similar like a catalog that shows the different types of traits that certain chickens have. And we do have another question about fertility. How many hens would you suggest per rooster for optimum fertility? I guess if they're trying to, sounds like they want to create more chickens.
Yeah, if you're gonna keep a rooster and some hens, you need to make sure you have enough hens so the rooster doesn't over tread your hens. So I would say over 4, but I like more like 6 to 8 hens per rooster, and about the same ratio with ducks, about 6 to every drake.
You can go up to like 12 hens per rooster and still have great fertility rates. And you could even go have more hens. You just might not get quite the same number of the same percentage of fertile eggs.
And if you pull in a new rooster or a new drake, they might not be fertilizing eggs right away or ever. So that's something to note as well.
Right on. Yeah, it's a huge learning curve, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to dive in with you both, as with so much experience on raising chickens and ducks and all of the pitfalls that come with it, but also just the sweet rewards and benefits to, you know, sustainably sourcing, raising, and learning from these beautiful animals. Well, I guess we're at the last couple minutes here, so people are saying thank you so much in the chat, and we really appreciate everyone joining us today. And do join us for next month, and we're going to have some more education with 21 Acres. But do check out our website. I'll link that for us all in the follow-up resources, so we can hang out with Daniel and Alexia again. And can you remind everyone the topic for next month?
Next month, soil blocks. Sorry, starting seeds from starting your own seeds, and especially using soil blocks, magic mud pies to start your own seeds, which is probably the most economical and sensible way to start most gardens. So yeah, join us next time. I'm super excited for that.
Plus, you'll probably get some of those questions answered about that compost heated hoop house.
Yes, I was so curious about that. Oh, thank you so much. Everyone is just being so sweet in the comments here. Well, we appreciate you all joining us, and I hope you have a great weekend. Daniel and Alexia, thank you always for so much wisdom. It's just always great to see you.
Yeah,
thank you,
likewise.
Rianne.
Great to be here with everybody today.
All right. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to generalinfo@21acres.org, and you can also email Daniel and Alexia through their website, hawthornfarm.org. We'll send you all that info later, but I hope you guys have a great weekend.